as though everybody has felt pens around the house nowadays, and if you don't have them around your house, surely you have them in your schoolroom. And there are a great many different kinds of felt pens. We're going to be working in felt pens today in our lessons, and I'd like to show you some of the different kinds of felt pens that we have. First of all, we have these felt pens right here, which are very, very common and wonderful to use. And felt pens, by the way, are not terribly expensive. Then we have some felt pens that look like this, felt pens that come in different shapes and colors and sizes. And the kind of felt pens that we're going to be using today are all these different felt pens. But actually, you don't need quite as many as that. You can go with just this particular type of box of felt pens for your first lesson. Besides having white paper and a box of felt pens, you're also going to need some scratch paper. Because let me show you something funny that happens with these felt pens. Before you plan your picture, you should know this. Let's take the blue felt pen for example. That looks like a light blue, doesn't it? Well, when you actually take the top off and you work with this blue felt pen, it comes out to a very bright blue, something that I call almost a medium blue. It's not dark, but it's awfully, awfully bright. It's not the pale color that you think it is. So you really need to take a piece of scratch paper and practice with these colors and practice your strokes. Do you want strokes like this that overlap? We're going to be using lots of those in our first lesson. Do you want to make a thin line, a short fat line, a wavy line? So you need to take a box of felt pens and practice actually with them to see what happens with the colors and the lines before you actually begin. Right now we're going to start on our first lesson. You will be drawing the lesson with a regular classroom pencil, but because I'm afraid that won't show up, I'm going to draw with a black felt pen. Please don't you draw with the black felt pen. I'll just draw with it. Now, you use your pencil. Now everybody can draw a triangle, right? And rectangles. And I don't think that I've ever found anybody that couldn't. So we're going to start today on our first felt pen lesson by drawing a sailboat. And luckily, sailboat sails are basically triangles that have been pushed out of shape a little bit so it looks as though the wind is in them. And then if you've ever looked at the flag on the top of a sailboat, the flag also looks like a triangle that's sort of been pushed out of shape. So that's really easy to draw. Then as far as the base of the sailboat goes, it's a little bit extended beyond the sails. And we can draw a rectangle that's been pushed out of shape at each end. No problem there. Let's see what else we could put in this picture of a sailboat sailing on the ocean for our first felt. We can sketch in very quickly some rounded bushes, a little beach if you wish, maybe a great big huge tropical flower over here in the corner. Maybe a banana leaf or a palm leaf over here just to add a little something to our picture. Perhaps a great big hibiscus up here in the corner. So all of these things seem close to us while the sailboat is farther back. And farthest back of all would be the horizon line where the ocean meets the sky. Now that didn't take me very long at all. Remember, you're going to do this part of the drawing in what? You're going to draw it in pencil. I did it in ink. Now, we're going to take our felt pens and let's find out what's unique about these. This type of felt pen, which I like a whole lot, has a wedge-shaped point. And because it does, when you lay down the color, and we're going to use every color of the rainbow on the sail, you get a lovely line, and where it overlaps a tiny bit, you notice that you get a very, very thin shading of a line. So when you get finished, not only do you have it colored, but you also have this overlapping, which provides sort of a pattern. You can also take your, you'll hear me say brush because you almost paint with the watercolor felt pen. But you can go ahead now, and once you've done your sketch of the sailboat, take your felt pens, use every color that you can think of, use nice broad stripes. So again, you can see that there is a pattern established here beginning to show when you overlap these colors. Now, I don't want to take too long with this, so what I'm going to do is put my finished picture aside. You can keep on working, and I'm going to go to the next step. You can always put your video on pause if you wish. Here's the first step that you now have completed probably, and that I have completed also. Notice that I've left a few white spots here. You can always take your pen and go back and cover them up if you don't want those showing. And notice right here, I've gone outside with the red a little bit. Well, since you're going to finish up with a black pen at the very end, you can go over little things like that that have gone the outside and you won't even notice it. But let's now talk about using our pens in a different way. We're going to use, instead of in a flat stroke going right across the paper, we're going to take our pen and we're going to use it, you could call it sort of in a scribbly fashion. You could say sort of in a rounded stroke fashion. And we're going to make this bush over here. Sails are flat, so they deserve a flat stroke. Bushes are rounded, so they deserve a rounded stroke. You can even go back in with another type of green and add a little bit of rounded stroke like this. Now let's go over here to the palm leaves. Now the palm leaves, on the other hand, would take a flat stroke again, but they would curve down, down, down like this and try to overlap a tiny bit so that you get that pattern, and down, 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 or up and out, depending which way they're going. And you see that those palm leaves look very nice indeed because you followed the shape of them. What about the flowers? Well, let's take a pen that is perhaps very light, and perhaps up here we might want to start with a squiggle in the center. But again, let's go down, 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 and out, 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 using your felt pen in this fashion to make the flowers. Now you notice that I've left some white in between. That's perfectly all right. It's just like doing a watercolor. Sometimes you add white or leave white for sparkle. Your flowers can be any color that you wish, of course, since they're tropical flowers, or we think that they are. You probably want to make them very bright, but try using your strokes in this radiating fashion coming out from the center. Now, when it comes to the ocean and the sky, this is where we might do some mixing. Remember that I said this particular blue is really a medium bright blue? Well, you could use it for the ocean. It would make your sails show up very well. Notice that I'm using a different stroke there. These are going to be longer. You can actually use it for drawing because around the sailboat itself you might leave some white spots where the waves are sort of crashing against the bow. You might have a little white space out here like this. The nice part is that you can also blend. For instance, if this blue is not what you think an ocean should look like, use your dark blue. We'll just pull out the dark blue in a moment. And what we will do, there's a little bit of a overage there, and I can do that. And the big thing is not to get hung up on what you might think is an error. It's not an error at all. It's just something that makes your picture look like your very own. Let's say that you want to add something to that ocean, and you say, well, that doesn't look the way I want it exactly. You can go back and add a few dark blue lines wherever you think that that's necessary. You can add a few green lines because, you know, nothing is ever just one color. And certainly the ocean, if you've studied it, shades from dark blue to light green. There's even some purple occasionally in the ocean. If you pick up the wrong pen, go back and blend over it, and just go ahead and finish up your ocean, and we'll talk about how to do the sky color in just a moment. If you're finding that this is going too fast for you, put your VCR on pause or even on stop. Probably pause is the best thing. And watch what's happening and take your time to catch up. But what I'm going to do right now is to continue with this picture and finish it up very quickly. Down here where we might have some sand or a beach, doesn't look very exciting at that, but we want all the excitement in our boat, really. You can start to blend there too. You can take yellow for the undercolor. You can take some orange and blend it in. And because brown in this set especially gets a little dark, we don't want too much heavy brown in there, but you can streak some in. So we've used our brush, yes, our pens very differently in this picture. We've gone stroke, 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 which was fairly careful. We've done rounded sort of scribbly strokes, radiating out strokes. Now we've got long, thin strokes with some blending. And now we come to the sky. You know, you can use all different colors for the sky. I have seen this done with a gray sky, looking as though the sailboat is hurrying on home. I have seen it done with a dark blue. I'm going to use a lighter blue right now, and even though this looks like the light blue pen in there, it's not exactly. You might, though sky's lines are usually horizontal, you can just take your pen and come down the center that way. But don't feel that you have to use this particular shade of blue just because I am. Now there are people who like to fill in their sky solidly. Some people like to put in clouds. Some people like to put in birds. I find that those are fun. And you can put in birds that are close to the boat and make them smaller and make birds that are farther away from the boat. You can almost use the painting that you're doing with your pen in this fashion. You can have light strokes here. This looks rather solid and close to you. The sky is sort of fading back. You know, no matter how many times I've taught this lesson, I've found that people, when it comes to doing it, use their own method. And so, even though I've shown you the types of strokes, that's not to say that you won't invent or do automatically a stroke that you like even better. And your color combinations will be different too. So you go ahead and finish up your picture, and in just a second what I'm going to do is show you some other student work of this and show you how different it is. Now, every time that you use your felt pen in a different way and use a different stroke, you're going to get a different feeling to your picture. This is the end of my part of the lesson, but I'm going to show you, before I end completely, some student work so you can see how different these pictures turn out. Let's look at this. See how solid this is and how bold? But here's an absolutely lovely picture where a student has used his pen in a different way. Dark blue outlines of the clouds. Look at the blending of the greens and the blues and the purples in the water. I like that a whole lot. And yet this one is entirely different. Look how beautiful and bold that is. Great big white clouds against a dark blue sky. A very heavy outlining with black when this person got finished. Gorgeous picture, very different from the one that was on top in just a moment. And here we have an entirely different one. Instead of using all the colors of the rainbow, this person stuck to blue and orange. Got a gorgeous picture. Dark blue sea, medium blue sky. Look at the light blue outlining of the cloud and the dark blue of the seagulls. Now this is all the same lesson, and yet everybody's picture came out somewhat differently. And that's what I hope you'll do too. Use the hints that we've given you on the felt pens and go ahead and make your very own picture. We're going to have a lot of fun with felt pens in this particular lesson. We're going to use these felt pens, though you can use any felt pens that you have around your classroom or around your house. These just happen to be the ones that I'm working with. They have that nice broad chiseled point. And today we're going to do something that everybody loves to do, and that's draw and paint with the felt pens a dinosaur. I'd like to show you some of these dinosaur pictures that my students have done first to show you the ways in which they have used the felt pens. This particular dinosaur, they've used the lizard-like color of green, but underneath I notice they have flesh, they have yellow, and then they put 2 or 3 shades of green on top. And what a brilliant idea for this particular student to use a yellow sky. It gives a very uneasy feeling to this picture. And look at this wonderful blue cloud in the yellow sky. I didn't teach the lesson that way, but because each person is an individual, that's the way this particular student saw the dinosaur picture. Now, nobody knows what the color of the dinosaur really was because we've never seen dinosaur skin. Dinosaur bones, yes, we've seen those, but we haven't seen dinosaur skin. So when this person did a shocking pink or fuchsia or bright orangey red dinosaur, that's okay. There is no reason why you can't do that too. The dinosaur that you do can be any color that you wish. But I especially like how this student has done the sort of, it looks like a ribbed plot of grass here, and then used their pen in a different way. So you've seen two entirely different dinosaurs out of the same lesson. And I'm now going to show you a third, and look, this looks different from the other two. What I'm trying to point out here is, even though we're doing a lesson today that is sort of directed and really a very structured lesson, it's going to come out in any way that you wish it to come out. And don't feel restricted to making your dinosaur look like a giant lizard. It can look any color that you wish. Look at the way that this person did the background. Do you see all those little strokes? Looks wonderful. Every single picture is different. Now what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to draw a dinosaur with a black felt pen, but you're going to use pencil. Don't use your black felt pen till the very end when you might want to outline this picture, okay? But if I use pencil, it wouldn't show up, so I'm going to use a black pen. Now, speaking about a dinosaur, I'm going to draw what I think is a brontosaurus, and though I understand now they're called apatosaurus, but you can draw, if your favorite dinosaur is a Tyrannosaurus rex, go ahead and draw that. If you're particularly good at drawing some other kind of dinosaur, you draw what you feel you're comfortable with. But I happen to be comfortable with this huge, hulking plant eater of a dinosaur. And so that's what I'm going to do. And I want a feeling of strength and a feeling of this dinosaur being very, very huge. Now I'm going to whip his tail around like this, and you notice it went off the paper? Well, just because I feel like it, I'm going to make the rest of his tail come back up again. Now we think that dinosaurs lived in a time that was sort of almost tropical in its temperature, and therefore I'm going to add quite a bit of grass here. You're doing this with pencil. And we think also that there were lots of exploding and erupting volcanoes at that time. And since volcanoes are almost as fun to draw, much fun to draw as dinosaurs, I'm going to put a volcano back here. You may want to put one in too. And then maybe a whole chain of volcanic mountains in the background, very raw mountains, maybe a fern-like plant over here, and fern-like growing tree size, almost looking like a modern-day palm tree, maybe. Now, you probably know more about dinosaurs than I do. I haven't studied them deeply, and you can put in whatever you think is appropriate to your picture, but this particular drawing is now finished. What we're going to do with our felt pens today is a little bit different from what we've done before. We're going to use blending in making our dinosaur in our picture. And with the dinosaur, remember, yes, you might think, well, that's lizard green. Fine, if you want to make it lizard green, I'm going to make an imaginary one, and I'm going to show you how to layer your colors and add one on top of the other so that they blend, just as perhaps watercolors might blend, or you might blend with oil pastels. We're using our felt pens today for blending. Now do remember that I said please draw your picture with pencil, because you might have a little bit of trouble with the black running otherwise. Now look what's happened here. Isn't that nice? On top of the yellow, I've put sort of a fuchsia, a deep pink, and the yellow shows through in most places, and it allows you to get a new color. I don't know what I would call this new color. It's not yellow, it's not fuchsia. It has tones of orange in it, and I rather like that. You can use any color you want, but please try some blending. On top of the yellow and on top of the fuchsia, I'm going to add some bright red. Okay, here we go with the bright red. Let some of your other colors show through a little bit. And as you do this, think a little bit about shading also. Now, because this would take me all day to finish, or a couple of hours, I'm going to stop at this point while you go ahead. You can put the video on pause while you go ahead and you do your dinosaur. You may hear me say paint your dinosaur. Well, these are water-based felt pens, and it's very much like painting. So I'm going to put this picture aside, and I'm going to show you another picture where I've finished the dinosaur, and we can talk about how to do the background. So here's what it might look like after you finish the dinosaur itself. Notice that you see some of the strokes. I personally rather like it when you see some of the strokes. Now, your dinosaur may turn out to be very smooth. Maybe you're the type of person, and it's okay, who goes back and smooths it out a little bit, as I'm doing right now. I rather think it's exciting to see the dinosaur with the colors coming through and some of the strokes coming through. But if that doesn't please you, you go ahead and make it smooth if you wish. But please, please, I hope you've blended. Okay, now what do we do with the rest? Well, since our lesson is basically on blending, I work with about 3 pens, 2 or 3 pens right close at hand at the time. And for a few minutes, it doesn't hurt to have the caps off, though after about 2 or 3 minutes, you want to make sure to put it back on. Let's go over here again, and since we're blending, let's make a really exciting volcano. And I'm going to start with my lightest color. Notice that the volcano is sort of in the background. And I'm going to put the top back on that because otherwise they'll just evaporate and be no good whatsoever. And I'm going to blend in some orange on top of the yellow and just shoot the sparks off. This is definitely a volcano that is just newly erupting and very, very active. And put the cap back on, and let's go then and blend in some red. Now you notice what has happened because of the shape of my strokes and because of the color that I'm using here, you get a very big bang. You get a very big feeling of excitement in that particular corner of your picture where that's erupting. Now that might detract from the main subject of your dinosaur a tiny bit, but we're going to cool this picture down a little bit while blending. Here we've used long, fairly smooth strokes. Here we've used medium-sized, exciting strokes. And for your grass, you can use this sort of choppy stroke. And again, we're going to blend. While the grass is going to turn out to be quite green, underneath, to sort of give a feeling of sunlight, I'm going to put some yellow underneath and then go over it with different kinds of green. Now you may say, well, gee, you're working awfully fast. I happen to work that way. If you want to work slower, you go right ahead. What I'm trying to achieve here is a feeling of excitement. This doesn't look like it's going to be very dangerous so far, even though I would feel danger in this setting. Maybe you don't, but let's add on top of the yellow a little green. You go at your own rate. If you want to work slowly, just work slowly. Either turn off the video or put it on hold or pause and go ahead and do your blending while I'm working very, very quickly here. And remember, you don't want to put in those black strokes until the end. Now notice what I'm getting. I'm getting a feeling of tall grass here, and that's exactly what I want to get. Remember that the Brontosaurus, or the Apatosaurus as he's now called, was an herbivore, didn't eat meat, unlike the Tyrannosaurus rex. If you have a Tyrannosaurus rex, you've got a meat eater there. But I want to get a feeling of that lush, tall grass. Certainly, this Brontosaurus might eat grass, weeds, ferns, whatever. And notice that some of the yellow, some of the light green is showing through. And you have a feeling that he's really standing in that. If I draw every part of his feet and the whole dinosaur very carefully, you wouldn't get that feeling that you get by using this kind of stroke. What is a shadow? Well, let's say underneath this dinosaur there would definitely be a shadow, so why not blend in some dark blue? And not only does it make the tail of the dinosaur show up, and this, ooh, I like that. I like the blue when it goes over the red like that, don't you? So that's why you want to experiment and try different things. I was trying to get shadow, but what I'm getting is something that looks very, very good and very nice. You don't want it to look too even. Just put in a few strokes like that. Okay, now, while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish this picture by putting in maybe the bark of the tree, Blending is the name of the lesson today, so I would not just put in brown. I'd put some yellow and maybe orange underneath. And then I'd come, yes, it definitely needs to show up. When I get around to putting the black outline on, I can show some crisscrosses. And here's a different stroke, sort of more careful. And it's a down, 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 because the leaves are hanging down here of this perhaps fern. All right? Now, remember the three pictures that I showed you at first and how different they all were. One person used a yellow sky, somebody used a dark blue sky. You use what you think you should use. And you know what? I haven't used any purple in here. Let's make some purple mountains in the background. I like that. If somebody says, well, you know, there never were purple mountains, you just say, well, squint your eyes up and look at some mountains and you'll see sort of a hazy purple. Maybe not as deep as this, except at sunset, then you might see that. But I like purple mountains, so I'm putting them in. An imaginary picture allows you to use whatever colors you want. And you don't have to feel that you're trying to please somebody else. And you know what? In art, you should never try to please somebody else. You should try to please yourself and feel good about your picture by doing what you feel is right. Now, I'm going to turn, you don't necessarily have to do this, but I'm going to turn my picture upside down because I want to do the sky. And by turning the picture upside down, I can now come in, and I'm going to use a dark blue to make this sort of foreboding and very menacing. And I'm turning this upside down deliberately so that I can come in here and do this in between the strokes, okay? And by doing that, and by using a dark blue with a dark purple, you get almost a nighttime feeling, maybe a stormy, overcast, thundery type of feeling. Maybe you want your sky purple. That's perfectly okay, or yellow, or gray, or whatever. You do what you think fits your personality and your picture best. And right at this particular moment, I'm just about finished with this picture. Yes, it's true, I need to do a little work right there, but it's very close to being finished. So let me show you a finished version of this. You go ahead and take all the time you want to finish up, do all the grass and whatever type that you want, and I'm going to show you a finished version of this particular picture. Maybe you want to put in more ferns. You could put a pedidactyl up here in the sky if you wish. Some ferny-like trees. Add whatever you wish and use the colors that you feel fits this picture best. And you'll come out with something very, very nice. Working with felt pens, of course, as I've said before, you want to always have a pad of paper or a piece of paper beside you where you can try out the strokes that you want to use and actually find out if the colors are true and what you want. Notice that I'm using a different kind of felt pen from the kind I've used before. I just wanted to demonstrate to you that there are other felt pens out there, and sometimes they're very nice indeed. I would try water-based pens if I were you, because they're a little bit easier to work with and they don't have an odor that bothers you. Today I thought that we'd do another fun lesson that has to do with something that you see happening all over the United States no matter where you live, and that is hot air ballooning. It seems no matter what state I've been in recently or what area of any state, I have seen hot air balloons all over this country. So let's look at a hot air balloon picture that was done by a student, and we're going to do hot air balloons with our felt pens today. I really like this. I think that this student has a lot of things going on here. These balloons feel like they're just rising and very close to you. This balloon has taken off a little bit further, and you can see how the child in this particular picture is enjoying himself and pointing down there and probably saying, oh, look at that little village and look at those trees. Don't they look like toy houses and trees? So today we're going to use our felt pens to make a hot air balloon picture. Now, when you do the drawing, please use pencil. I'm going to use a black felt pen so that you can see very carefully. An important part of the balloon is what is called the gondola. And the gondola is actually a wicker basket. I'm going to draw some squares that have been rounded off. They do not have to be perfect. And usually the gondola or basket has sort of a leather, soft leather bumper on the top. And these are made of wicker. And the people sit in the gondola. The propane tank is here somewhere. And the hot air rises up and goes into the balloon. We're going to show a balloon right here that has just taken off, but it has risen and it's going to go off the top of your paper. What we want to talk today is a little bit about placement, about composition, as well as about using the felt pens. And this feeling of rising off the top of your paper is going to make your picture lots of fun. Now, one of the things that you need to realize is that hot air balloons today sometimes have words on it, like advertising for a restaurant, or sometimes they have really wild designs. That's going to be the fun part of this, is in making whatever design you think is possible. Now, naturally, you don't want an empty gondola going up there in the sky or an empty basket. And people always worry about how to draw people. Well, first of all, I'm going to draw a child because I think children probably would have twice as much fun as a grown-up, though grown-ups certainly have a lot of fun. And I merely drew a circle. And I'm going to draw a little rectangle for his T-shirted arm, and maybe he's pointing down, and look down there, he's saying, there's Mom and Dad, there's our car, there's our town, whatever. And probably, with the other hand, he's holding on to something in here for dear life. I certainly would. If you want the eyes to look like they're going down, just make your circles down about here. Perhaps the person has a smile on. And that's all you have to do. That wasn't hard. Perhaps over here his friend is also in the balloon. There can be up to be 4 or 5 people in the balloon, or the gondola, and holding on for dear life down here perhaps has some sort of a T-shirt or whatever on. You can make a circular face and be pointing down with sort of a rectangular arm, which I've made rather skinny, but if you're drawing with pencil, that won't bother you. Now, let's think about the guy lines, or the lines that hold on. Some will come behind, some will come in front of. And there you've got your first balloon. Let's get a balloon that's very, very close to you. Maybe it's just rising off the ground. And let's just show part of it over there. They have sort of a vent or a circle in there. Almost all these balloons are ribbed, and ribbing means that they have these long curving lines that curve like the balloon. Now, many balloons are striped these days, so you could have stripes, you could have polka dots, you can make any design you wish. And I'm not going to take a long time drawing these designs. In fact, I'm not even going to finish that part so that we can go on with our picture. Maybe there's another balloon farther away. If you want to show the whole thing, this balloon could have drifted quite far. And again, you can make your own design on it. And you might not see the people because this might be a mile off by now. It's drifted a long way off. And perhaps you want to show one more huge balloon that is right close to you. And again, go ahead and make your designs. Now, at this particular point, you will switch from your drawing to beginning to blend your colors and beginning to do your balloon. For some reason or other, I usually start with the gondola, and I'm going to do that today, but you don't have to. If you're so excited that you want to do the balloon and the patterns and so forth, go ahead and do that. Let me show you one thing you can do with blending. I want this to end up to look like wicker, and wicker is sort of a brownish color. You know wicker, it's got a crisscross pattern in it. Somebody in your house or somebody somewhere has wicker. And notice that I'm sort of mixing my pens at this particular moment. I can even bring in a pen that's skinny. There's no rule that says if you've got 10 different types of pens in your schoolroom or at your house, mix them. Go ahead and just mix these pens right in. You can do that. And then you can overlap and layer and let some of that show through. You can use another kind of pen if you happen to have it. Now don't feel compelled to go out and buy lots of different types of pens. What you can do, and if you find it doesn't come out too darkly because somebody has used it up, you can just switch back to another. Here's one more type of pen that I just happen to have. As I say, don't feel that compelled to go out and buy a lot of pens. It's hard not to once you get started because you'll love felt pens so much. But just go with what you have in your schoolroom or at home to make your pictures. But if you happen to have some of them, you can mix them, and it's perfectly okay. Let's come in with a sort of faded pen that looks like it's on its last legs. And it makes a very nice bumper or shield or cuff to the gondola. Okay? Sometimes I throw in a little bit of that. Now, that takes care of that part, and why don't you go ahead and do the gondolas or begin on your colors. When you use your colors, you can blend, and you can use different types of strokes. In this part, I'm using a short, choppy stroke. I feel that that color is not exactly what I want, so I'm going to layer it, let some of the yellow maybe show through, and you get a very different shade of color than if you had just used one color all by itself. So sometimes I do that too. You can mix your pens if you happen to have them and figure out colors that go well together and use a variety of strokes. Now notice that I probably am not going to do the sky in this picture. That's not to say that you can't do the sky if you want to. You can. You can put birds in looking at these funny things. You can have a plain sky. You can color it in if you wish, but I'm not going to worry about that. Some people say, well, what's flesh color? Flesh can be almost anything because none of us are always the same two colors. Perhaps a light brown would do very well for a flesh color. Maybe a pinkish or orangish color, whatever you feel like using, because none of us are the same. We're probably not the same 2 days in a row either because of sun and so forth. But why don't you go ahead, use bright, vibrant, brilliant colors, and use blending and a variety of strokes. Strokes that go up and down, strokes that go around, strokes that go sideways. Just pick things and colors and strokes that you think go well together, and go ahead and enjoy your hot air balloon with felt pens. And what I'm going to show you right now is a picture that's almost finished, but not quite. This would be step 1 and 2, and here comes a picture that is about in step 3. It's just slightly more advanced than the other one, perhaps, and it's slightly different from the one that you saw before. Let's talk about doing things down on the ground, where you will want to use a variety of greens, a nice yellow green. You may want to put in trees that look like those little trees in a Christmas scene, and you may want to put in a village. Now, notice that my strokes change when I'm doing something different. And that's something that you sort of have to come to. If I'm going to do flat land, naturally my strokes are not going to slant down like this. If you're going to be doing trees, your strokes will vary also. And oddly enough, because we're working with water-based pens, these strokes will show up and be very interesting. So don't neglect perhaps having a little village or a little town underneath, maybe a van going around and following it. Now, let's take a look at what might be a finished picture. This is very complicated indeed, and yours doesn't have to be that complicated. But when you get finished, you will have bright, vibrant colors. You'll have a variety of balloons. Some of them have gone way up and off the paper. Some of them are half off the paper. I hope you have a lot of very easily drawn children or grown-ups in your picture. Maybe some mountains and a little village down below. But if you've used your pens in a variety of ways and blended your colors and really thought about where these balloons are going, I'm sure that you will have had fun with this lesson. In this particular lesson, we're going to be using a special kind of pen. You don't have to have this wide a variety of colors. You can get a set of 6, a set of 8, a set of 12. I happen to have these here because I do like to work with a wide variety, but you don't have to. But I do want to sort of warn you about these pens. There are a whole lot of different types, and the type that is so important is the type to have that has a medium point. The fine point you can use, but it will drive you wild because it is a little bit too fine. This medium point is just right. All right, the type of lesson that we're going to do today is in the style of a very famous Impressionist artist called Vincent van Gogh. Vincent van Gogh had a style that was just very identifiably his own, and so we're going to do a picture sort of like in the south of France with felt pens. He used oil paints. Let me show you a variety of student pictures first of all. This is a 3rd grade picture right here, and here we have also another 3rd grade picture so that you can see how these students used their pens in the style of Vincent van Gogh. Here are some Vincent van Gogh type pictures with felt pens at a different age level. Each one is different. Let me just give you a look at each one. Look at how this bright pink goes so well with the orange and with the dark blue down here. Notice how this one has a variety of shades like greens and oranges and yellows and reds, a mixture of colors, and that's what we're going to try to get. The sky is not just blue, it's a bright pink, it's a fuchsia, there's purple, there's yellow in there. Looks absolutely wonderful, and so does this. And this sky is not just plain colored, this has about 5 or 6 different colors in that field. So we're going to do a scene in the south of France. I think it could be an area called Provence. And while you're going to draw it and sketch it with your pencil, I'm going to sketch with my felt pen, a thin line felt pen, so that you can see it. I would advise you to sketch in pencil. Now we're going to do a variety of fields. We're going to do a house that might be in Provence. It's so easy to do. Let's put a tree that looks sort of like this. Because that's very much a Mediterranean type tree. And let's just put in very simple roof. And this is a large, tall, rectangular house, and the windows might be very rectangular like that. So that was really easy to draw. Now within this picture, we might have a field on a hill that's very close to the house. You can draw a line, something like this. It does not have to be exact, doesn't have to look exactly like mine. And that field might just separate itself into bands of color, and there might be another field, perhaps here, maybe one here, perhaps a slanty little hill, whatever. But this divides your picture up very, very nicely and offers us the opportunity to show that grass is not just green, wheat is not just yellow, that fields look different in different areas. You can, if you want to, put sort of a curlicue tree over here like this, so that in a moment it'll give us the opportunity to show some shading. And we're ready to begin. Your drawing didn't take you very long. It's extremely simple, and it's the background for our picture. Now the clue to doing this picture is to get the feeling of a Van Gogh print by using short, choppy strokes. And you'll hear me saying that over and over again. Now the house can be any color that you wish. I'm going to use this sort of light peach color. And notice that I'm doing my short, choppy strokes, and I'm leaving in between some white. And I'm not working too slowly right here. The idea behind the Impressionists was that when you paint outdoors, everything is never one color. There are a variety of colors within any one color. So this house, which in truth might have looked like sort of adobe, or it might have been sort of a light brown or a light tan, has so far a peach, a light orange. I'm going to take another color right now and put maybe some shading right here under the eaves. Put another color in. Grass, for example, is never all one color. So we want you to blend all the while trying to get that Van Gogh look by using short, choppy strokes. So let's talk about the tree for a moment. I'm going to put about 3 or maybe even 4 if I have them greens in my hand. I might even throw a blue in here in just a moment. I'm going to take this green first of all and use a different type of stroke. It's short and choppy, but it's curvy like this. This is another type of stroke that Van Gogh often used to indicate things that had a curved, fluffy type surface. And you might be tempted to leave the tree just like that, but do you remember that trees are not all one color? So I'm going to take a different green, and while I'm letting the first one show through, I'm using that curly, short, choppy stroke to show through. I think that it might be fun to throw some blue in there too, because green trees might have some blue in as well. I could go on and on. I could put yellow in the tree. I could put all sorts of things, but I think that that's enough for now. You notice that I haven't done the roof of the house yet, and I'm only going to do it partially. You can go ahead. Probably, if this is in truth the south of France, it would be a tile roof. It might be red, but I'm starting with orange. What kind of stroke am I using? Right, short, choppy stroke. That also gives you that feeling that it's made up of tile. As the shape of the roof changes a little bit, you're going to change your strokes a little bit. Perfectly okay to leave some white in between. Now I'm going to blend, or actually I'm putting these colors next to each other, and I'm putting the red next to the orange in here, and I'm going to get a bright red tile roof. And if you sort of half squint your eyes, the few strokes of white that I'm leaving there make it look very much like tile, and I've blended the colors. Now, because I want to show you the real feeling of Van Gogh, I'm taking about 3 yellows and a type of orange, and I'm going to begin to do a field of maybe, I don't know, it could be wheat, it could be grass that's been burned off. I'm going to use this stroke. Remember we said grass or wheat or whatever you're doing is never all one color. It's the impression of that color. So if we say to ourselves, well, I really want a field that looks yellow, well, put a lot of yellow in it, but then either go to a different shade of yellow and add that. And what else might be in that field? Well, certainly there might be some flecks of orange. Carry it from here down to here and put some flecks of orange in there. Notice that I'm not going all the way across at this point. With this short choppy stroke, it's so important to get so many different colors in there that I have a tendency to work on one section at a time and then carry it across. And of course, I'm not going to be able to finish this picture on video because I'll tell you, this is probably one of the longest lessons you've ever done. It may take 2 or 3 days. Anytime you really get tired of it, you should put it down and go back and finish it some other time, because it does take a long time, but I'll tell you, once you get started on this, you'll hate to stop, probably, because it's so much fun to do. Now, I notice that I don't have any cool colors in there, like blues or greens, but it's all right, and you could come in and occasionally you could put, maybe it begins to shade a little bit down here and change a little bit. You can put some blues in there if you wish, but look at the overall effect. 3 or 4 yellows, some yellow ochres. You could put in a little bit of light brown. You don't want to get too dark here. Occasionally you could put in a stroke of that. And you get the feeling of that field while not the exact representation of it. And that's what you want to get, is the feeling. Now, let me just start down here a ways before I jump around, and you'll want to start too. Maybe this is a field with iris in it. Van Gogh was big on painting iris. And we do want to get a feeling of that bright noonday sun. So I'm using some of the light purple and some of the darker. Aha, doesn't that look nice? Right away you get that contrast, short choppy strokes. And these choppy strokes are a little bit different from the others, and you'll find yourself doing that. You'll find yourself varying your stroke. And go ahead and mix in those colors. Let's throw in a little blue. Again, you might say, oh, why are we doing that? That field, when I looked at it, looked like it was solid purple with flowers. Uh-huh. But if you squint your eyes and look at it carefully, it doesn't look solid purple. You'll see blue shadows, pieces of green grass. So let's put a little green in there. You'll see all sorts of things in a field that, from a distance, gives you a feeling of all one color. And I do want to demonstrate green for you right now. I think I'll go into the greens for this reason. People have a tendency to take this and they'll say, there's a grassy field, that's it. Well, if you look very, very closely, that might be it in the bright sunlight. But again, that green might have some yellow in between. Short choppy strokes. It might have some mossy green, a darker green. Now that begins to look more like a field of grass. So if you just take your pen, as you used to take your crayons probably when you were little, and make everything green, just go across here and say, well, here's my green grassy field. Well, yeah, you'll have a green grassy field, but it's much more interesting to do it in the manner of the Impressionists, in the manner of Van Gogh, who said, there is every color of rainbow somewhere in that green, and immediately begins to look much, much more attractive and much more vibrant. You get light in it, and the Impressionists were really, really big on getting light and fresh sunlight and open air into their picture. Now you notice that I've used the short choppy stroke in lots of different ways. You can even use it horizontally if you wish. You can take whatever color it is that you decide to do for the sky, and again, the sky might not be all one color. It might seem to be sort of this aquamarine, but within that you might have another kind of blue, but you might use those short choppy strokes with a horizontal fashion. Now this picture is going to take you a long time to do, so I'm going to let you go ahead on your own at this particular point. You could, if you wished, you could go ahead and put the video on pause. You can look at it more closely. What I'm going to do is take another picture that is partially finished that I've worked more on, and then I'm going to show you how to finish up the picture. All right, now, here's a partially finished picture. Maybe you're at this stage right now. Maybe you need to go back and put a few more fields in. Let's see how I've made this picture interesting. I've used oranges and yellows up there and a little bit of an off yellow here. Practically every color of the rainbow is in that field. And again, lots of different colors are there. Many colors are there. And I've come down here because the tree would be casting some shadow. I put a lot of blue, a lot of dark blue right here in this field of what looks like green grass. There's also orange and red flowers in here, a little yellow. But closer to the tree, and where the tree's casting a shadow, there's very definitely a lot of dark blue and dark green. Okay, that gives you the feeling of a shadow cast here, a little shadow cast there. And how are we going to finish this up? Well, again, I think because green and grass is the hardest thing to do because you have that preconceived idea. I'm going to take the pen. They can be short, choppy strokes, very short, medium. Show some of the white in between. And go ahead and work perhaps on another part of this broken color picture. And I'm just going to finish up rather fast. There's no rule that says you have to finish as fast as I do. Okay, now what's wrong with this little piece of field I've just done? Well, if in truth we're using that idea of Van Gogh, this is all one color, and that sure enough does not give us the feeling of an impressionist painting. And so we're going to add just whatever we wish and feel like to get sunlight in there. There goes a little yellow orange. Here goes a little bit of bright orange. Aha, that picks it up right away. What about that green? We've only used one green. Oh dear. So let's go in and use a couple of different greens. Changes it right away, doesn't it? And You can put purple in the field, red. Let's try a little bright red to make it sparkle. And you can go ahead and finish up your picture. Notice that I did the sky practically all in one color. What you can't see probably too well is I did sneak a little bit of lavender in there to get a feeling of a sunny day. And we used our pen in a different way over here. We used this type of stroke. Again, very much like Van Gogh. Reminds me of a picture of a field where he had some crows flying. He used a lot of this curlicue stroke, but it was basically short and choppy. But it was curlicue and rounded. Now, you know, I try to avoid what I call a cartoon approach to pictures. I don't really like that. And at first when I drew this tree, it's a little bit close to what I call a lollipop tree, which children and grown-ups too have a tendency to do. But by varying your stroke and putting in lots of different greens and, for that matter, yellow, and not only that, but again, because this is an impressionist type of painting, we're going to put in some blue. Makes it look green. And maybe some dark blue. It doesn't come out to be your typical lollipop scribbly stroke tree. It really does look a little bit like a Van Gogh type of tree. And when you get finished with your picture, you're going to have a picture where people go, ooh, and ah, and how gorgeous that is. And you're going to have a nice feeling of completeness, but the best part of doing this picture is actually working on it, because it is great, great fun to do. Let me show you again some of those that we opened with. This one, which is a student painting, and this one, and this one, and notice how different they all are. Some of them have blended the colors better than others. Some of them have, but it all looks like their own personality. No two of these pictures are the same, and none of them are exactly like mine, and that's what you want to achieve. So go ahead and use your medium point pens today in an effort to do a Van Gogh impressionist type picture with lots of light in it, lots of sunlight in it, and use broken color.